Caterpie is a Pokemon with suction cups on his feet, designed to stick to any surface. But what would happen if we threw him into the past or future? Okay, the future form for Caterpie was basically going to be an electric type robot. To be fair, I made this as one of the first pieces coming back, so I wasn't doing anything drastically different. I started by mapping out the original shape of Caterpie and already started working on the head shape, and I gave it a metallic plate on his chin and I added some depth into his mouthpiece. We also replaced the stick on his head into one instead of having one that goes two separate ways. I also made sure to make the tail look quite different as well. It now has a big point with an electrical kind of point sticking out of it. I started rendering this piece after I did the sketches for the second and third stages, so that meant that I wanted to try something different for the tail parts. Usually I add gray segments into there, but this time I figured it would be cool if I add the lighted parts into that section. Of course, the colors were basically just Caterpie colors. Iron Coil, the future form of Caterpie. This Pokemon is reinforced with armor and an internal power cell. It scans its surroundings with digital sensors and stores energy from ambient electric sources, waiting to release it to its target. I don't say it often, but I feel like this is a perfect version of a future form of Caterpie. I feel like it genuinely captures the essence of Caterpie, but builds upon that by adding the electric typing and making the features feel more like an electric type. All in all, I am just extremely happy with this piece. I hope you like it too. For a Metapod piece, I wanted to make sure to give him a way of actually moving instead of having to jump everywhere. So I figured I added some wheels like R2-D2 in Star Wars. After that, we made sure to make his body feel more blocky instead of organic. And this is where you see what I actually meant with the lighted part segments on his tail, because doing it like this makes it feel like he has an energy core inside of him instead of only being in the middle part of its body. Other changes were to add two segments in his back to show the lighted parts as well, and other than that, he basically looks like a robotic Metapod. But don't worry, Butterfree does actually change a lot, so don't worry about it yet. When I added in the colors, it really came to life, especially the green with the yellow combined. When I also looked at the wheel parts together with the colors, I really felt like it was an army kind of Pokemon, and I think my brain just put him inside the actual Pokemon world immediately. Iron Bot, the future form of Metapod. This Pokemon is a containment unit for a high voltage core. It can emit electric bursts if disturbed, functioning as both a shield and a trap. We believe it's also used as a battery for army purposes. Alright, Iron Bot. I did want to call this Iron Tank, but I have a Pokemon in mind that I will use that name for instead, so Iron Bot it is. I'm once again extremely happy with this piece. The wheels definitely don't look perfect, but I still think it's a good enough attempt to add them onto the piece, and together with the battery-like lore, I think this Pokemon is definitely something cool. Now on to the Butterfree piece. This was definitely one where I wanted to make a big change into this line and Butterfree in general. I figured it would be cool to remove the wings of this design and just replace the airborne feature into a speedy runner variant of Butterfree. I did so by making the pose quite energetic. I know the leg looks kind of wonky in the back, but I wasn't sure how to fix that, so just pretend that's not there. Other than that, I did want to bring the wing features back into the design, and I thought a great way to do it was to add ribbons to the back of his hands. We also made sure to add a segment to the middle part of its body, add an actual sort of screen onto his face, and what I especially love about this design are the little electrical antennae on the top of its head. I will say that I debated quite a bit on the color palette of this design, and that was basically because I felt like it would be cool to keep the army color palette in there, but I also wanted to make sure it did still look like Butterfree, so I opted into the original color palette of the Pokemon, with of course a slight adjustment to remove the blue and pink out of the color palette. Iron Skitter, the future form of Butterfree. This Pokemon is a high-speed bot equipped with strong mechanical feet and energy-emitting antennae. It specializes in scouting and interference, disrupting opponents with electric light pulses. This is one of those designs that you might not like because it's too different from the original Butterfree design. I, however, really like that it's that different because it just makes the Pokemon more interesting, to be honest. It's definitely not perfect, and we did also have to give him different eyes because not having the tiny holes in them actually made him feel weird, and now he actually has a point that he's looking at instead. So I quickly wanted to update you guys that I now have a Patreon set up. Don't feel pressured at all to get it, but you dropping a comment and a like on this video already helps a lot. For the people that do wonder what you can get, for the best friend tier you can pick one Pokemon to receive a Paradox form, and for the legendary friend tier you can pick an entire line to receive a Paradox form. Go check it out, link in the bio. Okay, my first past design in a very long time. I definitely took some inspiration from Slitherwing, the past form of Volcarona, and the first thing I did was to recreate the pose of a Caterpie, and then we started adding the past features onto it. We gave him some fur around his neck, we made sure the horns on his forehead were a lot bigger than what they were before. He added some big tusks on his face, replaced the little knobs as hands into actual kind of toes on there, and last but not least we added the fur-like feature on the tip of its tail as well. For the colors, I firstly opted in to use the original colors of Caterpie, but I felt like those did not feel as powerful as I wanted them to be. This is why we went with a darker palette instead, but we did make sure to bring the original color back on the tip of his nose and the little segment on its tail too. I will definitely say that rendering this piece took me a bit longer than usual, and that's basically because I hadn't rendered a past form in quite a long time. I just forgot how the frick I had to do that. So in the end it actually did come together quite nicely. Feral Larva, the past form of Caterpie. This Pokemon is a combative larva that thrives in hostile prehistoric environments. It uses its tough hide and powerful horn to engage predators head on, showing no fear despite its size. Feral Larva, one of the first bug dragon types, if not the first in the entirety of Pokemon. I definitely think you can see the draconic features in the design, but when you look at the shiny, you're definitely saw that this thing can be a dragon too. I do think it struggles a bit from the perspective issue around the facial area, but overall I think the design is good enough to stand on its own, and especially with the evolution that's coming up. Now onto my favorite design of this entire line, the past form of Metapod, where I wanted to make sure that he looked dynamic and that he looked powerful, that he changed a lot, and I have succeeded at that. He kind of looks like a banana / boomerang, and I don't know how I did it, but the perspective finally seems to work for a piece. I feel like it's a good design too, because it actually changes up the features of Caterpie and not just makes him bigger. So for example, the horn that was on Caterpie's forehead now is actually a nose horn, and his eyebrow is part of that horn too. This just makes me feel like it's an actual evolution instead of just the same Pokemon but bigger, right? When working on this piece, I definitely saw potential in a fast moving Pokemon, which was something that's extremely interesting to me, that we make a version of Metapod that's actually dangerous instead of just being tanky and spamming Harden. We put that emphasis on speed by adding the fluff on the back of the Pokemon, and that really made him look sort of like a rocket. That's definitely what I wanted to do for the lore as well. The colors were a little puzzle to figure out, and that's basically because I wasn't sure where to put which color, but in the end we went with a slightly darker palette of the first stage, and we just manually added a secondary layer of the fluff on its back, and we added a red color to other tips as well. Bursted Pod, the past form of Metapod. This Pokemon is known for its ability to propel itself at high speeds using stored muscle tension. It crashes into enemies like a living battering ram before recoiling into safety. Yep. Favorite design, once again. I'm sorry. Look at that thing. I'm not a fan of Metapod's regular design. I'm okay with it, but this thing would be my favorite Pokemon. I would probably not evolve it because this thing is just so cool. I will say that the evolution is pretty sick too, but this Pokemon is just way too cool, especially with its lore and speed of the Pokemon. I just hunt for a shiny, make it speedy as heck, and just one-shot anything I can find with a level 100 Bursted Pod. Sick. Yeah. Yes! Now onto the past form of Butterfree, where I wanted to make sure to add a few details from the Venonat line into this piece. You might be wondering why I would do that, but to me Butterfree really looks like the evolution of Venonat, and I figured it would be cool to play into that feature and sort of make this Pokemon into a common ancestor. So the features that were from the Venonat line were of course the fuzzy body, and we made sure to add the same type of horns from the Venomoth design. At first I wasn't sure if I had to add the wings into the design then, because I figured it would also be cool if he would just be walking like a chimp, but in the end I didn't want to make two designs that removed the entire flight feature of the Butterfree line, and we just replaced the wings with horn-like versions of itself. The colors were once again extremely difficult to figure out, and that's basically because I really like the color palette of the first two stages, but of course Butterfree has a completely different palette again, and although I may have tried to put my color palette into this design, it actually looked better with the original color palette. We did once again change it up a little bit and added my own red color for the horns and the yellow for the paradox eyes. We then just had to render the piece and eventually it came together beautifully. Winged Terror, the past form of Butterfree. This Pokemon is a savage aerial predator that relies on brute force instead of powder-based tactics. Its wings are blade-like and its aggressive behavior makes it feared by even larger foes. I just don't know what it is. I like this design, but coming from Metapod's design, it just doesn't hit the same for me. It might just be due to the color palette change, but I also feel like the second design was just really original and it just loses that because we had to turn it into a type of Butterfree, right? Imagine not having to do a Butterfree kind of design, and imagine we could make the Metapod design into a freaking big huge ram kind of Pokemon. That'd be freaking sick, dog.